Hey y'all! Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. In May of 2010, my family took a trip to Greece where we met up with my parents in Athens to set out for our trip. My mother is Greek, so she was the perfect tour guide for our trip. She could converse with all the Greeks that we encountered throughout this trip. The last time I'd been to Greece was when I was a child. My dad was stationed at Rhein Air Base, Germany. You remember he was in the Air Force. So the 3 years we were there, the 3 summers, Mom would take my sister and I each summer to Greece, Athens area, is a suburb of Athens where my mom grew up. And that's the time that we would spend seeing my yaya, or our yaya, that's grandmother, Thea, which is aunt, Thea, which is uncle, and my cousins, my 2 cousins, my mother's sister. So, and she lived in apartments, high-rise apartments, that were practically across the street, across 4 lanes of highway, a main road, and the beach was on the other side. So it was pretty awesome. So back to the trip I took in 2010 with my family and met my parents there. We drove to Patras and we visited St. Andrew's Cathedral. It's a gorgeous church. The day we went, they were actually setting up for a funeral, but we were able to look around there for a while. And here is where I want to share my encounter with you, about my encounter with St. Andrew in St. Andrew's Cathedral there. I not only have pictures to remember this by, but I also wrote down my memories of this because I thought it would be important to share the more details, you get more details when things are written down. So I was able to really try to put forth what I encountered, the mystical encounter I had with him. And so I'm going to share that with you now. As my family and I stepped inside the Church of St. Andrew in the town of Patras, Greece, we immediately observed its huge interior with frescoes and mosaics in brilliant colors encompassing the walls and ceiling. The large space was cool, and our feet shuffling on the marble floors echoed through it. Straight ahead was the narthex, or foyer of the church, and further in the nave. There were chairs on either side of the aisle, leading up to where the marble-laden icon screen stood, particularly beautifully ornamented, with the altar in the center. Large chandeliers hung down from the lofty ceiling, where in the center the Pantocrator, the Christ, ruler of all, painted in the dome, gazed down and blessed us. Eventually, my sons and I, along with my mother, came to the white tomb where St. Andrew's head lay under a silver and glass enclosure. Vases with beautiful flowers were on either side of it. I kneeled on the step before the tomb and bent my head, saying nothing at first. A glorious mystical fragrance permeated the air around me. At first, I thought it was the flowers next to me on the left and right side, but I leaned over and inhaled their scent, and none of them had this wondrous aroma. The smell closely resembled flowers, gardenias perhaps, but it wasn't. It was emanating from the relic below the silver and glass box covering it. Moved to tears, I struggled to swallow the lump that had formed in my throat. Just then, St. Andrew's life and ministry flashed through my mind like a motion picture. It was as if I was traveling with him and could feel everything he felt. His pain at his crucifixion struck me in the heart. I caught my breath. And it was then that I asked St. Andrew to pray for us, kissed the glass dome, and crossed myself. Housed in wood and glass next to the marble sarcophagus were the original pieces of the cross on which St. Andrew was martyred. As I had done a moment ago at St. Andrew's tomb where his head lay, I kissed the glass encasing the remnants of the wooden cross. My faith was affirmed and strengthened that day. You know, these type of experiences, you just never forget. They're always it's indelible in your embedded in you for hopefully your whole life. And it's a great memory. It was a great moment. It's a real mystical moment where I felt somehow could feel St. Andrew's life, what he was going through in his life, and the pain that he might, has felt on at his crucifixion. It was very strange. I've never had anything like that to happen, and I was just kneeling there. I hadn't said anything. I just was down like this, and it came out of nowhere. And it was a very, very moving moment. Like I said, it brought me to tears. And, I have no closeness to St. Andrew. He's not my patron saint. You know how some saints better than others? That's kind of how it was for me in this. And to have that type of connection, whatever it was amazing. And it's something I just couldn't believe it. And I stood up, obviously, and then I went and venerated his pieces of the cross that shaped in an X. Sometimes when you're in those situations, you almost can't really imagine what you were witnessing, what you were seeing, because it's so surreal. So even when I think about it now, I'm thinking, wow, I was actually there to see his relic, his head, and then his tomb. It actually had his tomb in there as well, but his head was in a separate case. And then, of course, the cross. I mean, it's hard to imagine that far back in history to connect it to anything now, but amazing. So I wanted to share that with you. Hopefully it was an interesting story to you, uplifting, and maybe you've had experiences like this. Maybe you've visited saints and saints' relics and this happened to you. I'd love to hear if you have, your stories and your experiences. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for subscribing to my channel, following it. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider it. And then, of course, if you want to get my videos right when they come out, you can hit the notification bell below my videos. Thanks.